Like we said, jump into a divisional outlook though. Baltimore kind of gets a quick gauntlet week 1 through 5. At Kansas City, Las Vegas, at Dallas, Buffalo, and at Cincinnati. Those games are going to be really difficult early, and kind of will define what they can do if they go 3-2. That's pretty good actually coming out of that.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Was just if you come out of that slate 3-2, your hard part's pretty much out of the way.
Yeah.
And then you can go from there. But if you start out 2-3, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but you have a lot of ground to make up in terms of seeding.
Yeah.
Because again, only one team gets a bye at this point. They were that team last year, and that helped them propel them to get to, the AFC Championship game. So
hardest division in football.
Hardest division football.
Hard strength schedule.
Fortunately, there's only one game in that group of 5 that's a divisional game.
Right.
So you drop that, you're still going to be okay for the most part. But Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, those are huge tiebreaker games, and you got to knock them out like that. So, and then also they're, again, one of the teams affected by the 3 games in 10 days from week 14 to 16. Somewhat easier slate, but 2 of them are road games.
Yeah.
So you never know what kind of impact that has. And then their one home game is the Steelers, who always play them well. Last year, Baltimore dominated the game, and they just gave it away. And fortunately, that didn't, hurt them in terms of locking up the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'll be as easy, and it'll make a bigger difference in my eyes next year.
And we think Pittsburgh is obviously better than they were last year, so that makes it even tougher. Browns, toughest schedule in football, 32nd. And then if you just look at, they're going to, of course, play the AFC North twice. So everybody in this division twice. But then they also have Dallas, at Jacksonville, at Philly, Cincinnati,
their
Chargers.
First 9 games. I want to read that out because it's last year. One of my better calls in terms of overall record, I was like, the Giants are going to start like 2-7.
Yeah,
because their first 10 games were just absolutely gauntlet. That's Cleveland this year. Let me read out their first 9 before their week 10 bye. So you have home against Dallas. Pick them, my eyes, but Dallas is favored. So let's just say that they're losing that game. At Jacksonville, they're going to be back to formidable, at the very least, a wild card possible team. Giants, sure, we'll give that a gimme, but you never know. 3 straight road games against Vegas, the Commanders, and the Eagles. And then you have 3 straight home games. Oh, but it's against Cincinnati, Baltimore, and the Chargers.
Yep.
So you're essentially 8 teams that will be in the playoff conversation. You're going to be hitting out the gate. So, I don't even know if I can give them 4-5 right now.
Well, then don't forget.
And that if that happens, that might be all she wrote for.
Right. And then they come back and they play KC, Miami. I don't have the actual order, but they play KC, Miami, and then they play all of their division games,
final
basically.
5 games are at Pittsburgh, Kansas City, at Cincy, Miami, at Baltimore.
Yeah, that's just terrible.
Like how do you get right now? Their win total is 8.5, and I said the easiest bet right now, if you want to make any kind of bet, is under 8.5.
Right.
I don't even see how you get 8 games out of that slate.
And we talked about all the ifs. If you go watch our power rankings video, there's so many ifs with this team, like we said, and they don't know what they're going to do at quarterback, running back, wide receiver. Like, can their defense be as good as they've been? We don't know. And so, toughest schedule, not sure what's going to happen. And, just if they don't come out of the first 9 games with 5 wins, they won't make the playoffs. There's no way. It's just not really possible to me. And that's even pushing it to me. So, exactly. So then you got Cincinnati Bengals, week 12 bye. They kind of have a pretty easy stretch to start, which is the opposite. And, confidence is built at the beginning of the season and kind of continues throughout. New England at KC, going to be a hard game, but then they got Washington, Carolina playing then against Baltimore, but then they get the Giants. So they win one of the KC Baltimore games. They're 5-1 to us.
Yeah, and it'll be a kind of a refreshing thing for Cincy because since Joe Burrow's been there, I feel like they've been 3-3 or worse to start the year every single season, including their Super Bowl year. At the very least 2-2. And then last year, obviously, tough start, a lot to do with the Joe Burrow injury, but they did have a tough slate. To start the year, they started getting flowing, and then it just kind of fell apart. Again, this year, the whole AFC North was just, I don't even know how to describe it, but just screwed with the difficult schedules.
Right.
They were the one team that strength of schedule wise, they weren't in the top 5. They're in the middle of the pack. So that's going to make a huge difference in addition to Burrow returning. And we'll just kind of see what happens. But other than, having the 4-game stretch in 18 days following the bye, there's not a ton other than, their divisional and typical, head-to-head matchups that they have with Kansas City, Buffalo. That's just going to make it seem like, they won't be back in the thick of things towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I think they have probably 9 tough games. Mm-hmm. So if they win half of them and they win the easy games, they are possibly a top 3 seed, and you shouldn't really be surprised by that, I guess. Mm-hmm. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were the 32nd based on strength of the schedule for the Warren Sharp
win totals.
Yeah. Final 8 games, they're against they're all divisional games, and KC and Philly. And it's going to be really tough, but if they can create the momentum at the beginning of the year and get to a point where they're confident enough that they could be a wild card, I think they make the wild card for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, their bye is right in the middle of their schedule, so week 9. So they got 8 before, 9 after. And then obviously, like we said, the 8 tough games. All of the games are at the division towards the end of the year. So even if you start off 7-3 or something of the nature, if you drop 4 games in the division, that's going to make the difference. Yeah. Because you have to have the target score of getting to 10 wins as a AFC playoff team. Last year, I don't think we had any. We had a couple winning record teams that missed the playoffs, but not any 10-win teams, and that was largely because of quarterback injuries. Because say Jacksonville and Cincinnati and Cleveland and what have you didn't have the quarterback issues. Well, those 8-9 records turn into 10-7.
Yeah.
And then somebody's got to miss. Well, that's got to be your target score, essentially 10 wins. And can you get there getting 6 to 7 early and then knocking out about three right. of the 6, which that seems like you're backing your way into the playoffs, but it depends on who you're beating. Because if you hypothetically sweep the Ravens, that's going to be huge for momentum. And say you go 3-6, but 2 of them are against Baltimore. Like, I don't consider that, oh, I'm worried about you.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah.